My move to the Gold Coast. Moving my life across the country wasn't as hard as I thought it was going to be, but it still ended up being a whole process. Getting my cat ready for takeoff was a project itself. I had to purchase the proper sized carrier, get her vaccination papers in order, and try to make sure that she relieved herself before the flight. Otherwise, I sent 5 big old boxes over to my future apartment with Omar and packed a couple suitcases for the plane. When departure day came, it didn't feel like I was about to move away indefinitely, but rather like the last time I flew out to visit Omar, ultimately in pursuit of a warm getaway. My parents drove me to the airport, and my mother cried as she hugged me goodbye at the terminal. It was one of the most exciting moments of my life at that point, to be leaving the whole East Coast verse behind, with nothing but uncharted territory ahead. The flight was as good as flights get in my book, with beer, movies, my cat at my feet, and the entire row to myself. How long will this sense of vacation last? I wondered. The answer became not too long in a lot of ways, considering how I had to find a job pronto to pay off my end of the rent. But Omar told me not to sweat it too much, and that we could have ourselves a nice week-long vacation type thing before I hunkered down into full residency mode. He picked me up at the main Gold Coast airport, and we drove off to the new place. I had seen pictures, but they hadn't done it justice. The hardwood floors were homey, and there was far more space than I imagined. The best discovery was that I had my own bathroom, something I had missed in the initial apartment description. Luckily, he had some solid Gold Coast green power on deck, so we consumed, and I felt acclimated to the new scene already. The next day, we checked out the local green power dispensary called Pottery East, a place that would become my next employer. I purchased the orange Cookie Max strain of green power, and we were off to restaurants, the beach, etc. It's hard to remember everything that happened that week, as I transitioned into Gold Coast life in a haze, still processing the last 3 years of my life with Luna, and where exactly my life was headed. Omar was a good companion, quite vested in his own academic world, pursuing a PhD in engineering, as he led a mostly quiet social life with some close friends. We shared a low-dose mycosporin experience together one night, just hanging out at the apartment, and while I remember it being psychologically enlightening to some extent for the two of us, there isn't anything major that I can remember to report. Perhaps that's because I was saving my stronger mycosporin experience for the end of the year, the New Year's that would conclude the decade. I don't know why I had so much reverence for the end of the decade. I didn't usually ascribe too much importance to simple matters of dates and times. Looking back at where my life was 10 years prior to that time, though, I could simply see all the growth and the changing of the times. It was all too historical to not get sentimental about. I secured a part-time job at a shoe store called Fox and Game, an expensive athletic dress shoe store where the soles are heavily cushioned and the leather is incredibly malleable. Handmade in Europa, allegedly, these shoes were all the rage for people with way too much money and nothing better to do but waste it on hyped-up footwear. To be fair, the shoes really are quite comfortable. How the bone structure of my legs holds up over time will be another story. But for now, they are solid kicks. Hard to say whether I'd drop $425 on them if I had my millions. And though I reckoned initially that I wouldn't, it seems ultimately like a small dip in the account for some snazzy shoes for those with some scratch in tow. Unfortunately, the company culture wasn't nearly as solid as the shoes themselves. The store was designed idiotically with several structural problems, and the management was born from nepotism, thus unequipped for actual managerial tasks. Deals changed every week in ways that didn't make sense, and we were sent condescending emails reminding us of basic store policies we all had been following. What a big old joke. Still, I was paid fairly well for sitting in a chair and helping less than 20 customers per 6 hours max. Eventually, I got my dispensary job at Pottery East, which was a huge relief. It seemed like such a chill place to sell green power, and I was bound to have loads of the stuff for cheap. I slowly started to meet interesting people there, and got familiar with the general population in this sector of the Gold Coast. It was the perfect setup, these two jobs relatively close to my apartment, and so I was officially living on the Gold Coast without the stress of finances. Before I knew it, my birthday came, and I enjoyed high 70s weather in December for the first time, as I walked on the beach and drank fancy cocktails at restaurants chosen by Omar. It was starting to feel like the life, as if I might have really scored this time with my grand plan, and that feeling remained for quite the while. A few weeks after my birthday came New Year's Eve, and it was time for my last mycospawn experience of the decade.